promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Senegalese Navy rescues 252 migrants 30 kilometers off the coast of Dakar. Mali's junta leader Colonel Assimi Goïta receives report of the inter-Malian dialogue with a promise to restore peace.
These statements give us real hope at arriving at a sustainable resolution of the conflict that we have been living with for more than a decade.
The federal government of Nigeria orders all ministries and agencies to purchase only vehicles powered by natural gas. The United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel calls for greater implementation of ECOWAS Court of Justice rulings.
Judgment of the court is final and binding on member states. But when these member states receive, like Ghana refused to implement judgment of the court.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. This edition begins here in Senegal, where a canoe carrying 252 migrants from the sub-region was intercepted on Monday, 30 kilometers off the coast of Dakar. The migrants were rescued by the Senegalese National Navy. On its X account, the Navy reports that the canoe was leaving Bani, where it got intercepted during an operation coordinated by the High Seas Patroller. According to the Senegalese Navy, the 252 people from Senegal and the sub-region were handed over to the competent services. Let's now move to the Sahel, particularly in Mali, as the president of the transition officially received the final report of the inter-Malian dialogue on Monday. Colonel Assimi Goïta noted with satisfaction the process of these exchanges, which, according to him, will make it possible to resolve conflicts in the country. However, President Goïta did not comment on the extension of the duration of the transition of his candidacy for the next presidential election. Details with Etse Atisu.
Upon receiving the final report of the inter-Malian dialogue, the president of the transition first expressed his satisfaction with the progress of the dialogue. Colonel Assimi Goïta said he was convinced that the recommendations of this dialogue will help resolve internal conflicts.
These statements give us real hope at arriving at a sustainable resolution of the conflict that we have been living with for more than a decade, as are the recommendations of the other forums. The resolutions and recommendations of the inter-Malian dialogue will be the subject of great scrutiny by the organs of the transition.
The transitional president reiterated his authority's objective, which is to restore peace after several years of security crisis.
The Malian people have long been struggling to achieve peace and reconciliation, and this constitutes the main ingredient of national unity. We will have to go through trials imposed by terrorist groups supported by foreign sponsors. In light of the urgency of the pacification of our country, our ultimate ambition is to contribute to the realization of the collective dream of Malians, a dream of peace, reconciliation, and national cohesion, but above all, of development.
Furthermore, Colonel Assimi Goïta made no comment on the extension of the transitional period, nor did he speak about his candidacy for the next presidential election, which is one of the key recommendations of this inter-Malian dialogue.
The inter-Malian dialogue has made recommendations and adopted resolutions. These recommendations and resolutions include discussions including national unity, defense, and security.
Pending the implementation of the recommendations of this dialogue, its contents could become the subject of heated contestations in future.
Elche Atisu fight that report. Over to Cote d'Ivoire, a country which goes to the polls next year to elect a new president, and already political parties are lining up for battle, with many putting forward their candidates. After President Laurent Gbagbo was nominated as PPAC candidate, COGEP President Charles Blegude has expressed his interest about also running in 2025. The COGEP recently held a congress in the political capital of the country, Yamoussoukro. Imo Edit provides the details in this report filed by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Abin Ade.
During the decade of military political crisis that Côte d'Ivoire experienced, Charles Blair Goudin was one of these young leaders close to Laurent Gbagbo. The president of COGEP was also accused by his detractors of being at the head of a significant fortune. Goudin's intention to participate in the 2025 presidential election has received mixed reactions among the population.
I don't think that's a very good decision. Firstly, he's sentenced to 20 years in prison, and secondly, the Ivorian population needs a new political body.
He's a citizen. The people should judge him based on his policies. If they find the policies convincing, then that's okay. It is a choice they must make. He should try to deal with the legal issues surrounding him, and with time, God will intervene. For now, we should all be patient, and let's hope that he's lucky. We just want peace.
According to Serge Patrick de Souza, an Ivorian observer, although Charles Blair Goudin is relatively less popular in the country, he could just find a strong footing in the political scene.
If the opportunity arises, it would be a very good thing to present to oneself. A new cycle must be initiated. I think it's a new generation that really needs to come forward. Take, for example, Senegal with its young president, Mr. Bassirou Diomaye Faye, and his Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. If he wants to run, the public's view of the presidency provides ample resources. He has every chance.
Despite being ineligible to contest at the moment, a little over a year before the presidential election, Charles Blair Goudin announces that he will decline when the time comes.
Imo Edit with that report filed by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Albin Ade. Elsewhere in Chad, the European Union said it has taken note of the progress of the first round of the May 6 presidential election and the provincial results. EU's remark in a press release on Monday followed Success Masrat's petitioning of the Constitutional Council over the weekend, challenging the presidential results that declared Mahamat Debi Itno winner. The interim president secured 60% of the total vote cast, and the Prime Minister garnered a little over 18%, alleging electoral fraud. The European bloc, however, deployed the non-accreditation of thousands of election observers deployed to monitor the process, while urging aggrieved candidates to use legal instruments in settling any disputes. The international partner went on to ensure N'Djamena of its support in holding future elections, including the legislative and local polls. Official results are expected on May 21 to officially end Chad's transition that began in April 2021. And the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel is calling calls for greater efforts in the implementation of ECOWAS Community Code of Justice rulings by member countries. UNOWAS commended the CSOs for mounting pressure on member countries to respect various rulings made by the court. Sankule Janko in Banjul has more in this report.
These comments were made at the Forum on the Participation of NGOs at the 79th ordinary session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in Banjul. The UN systems and human rights advocates registered their commitment to defending human rights. Meanwhile, during a panel discussion led by the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel UNOWAS, human rights actors deliberated on the protection of human rights by the UN mechanisms and by regional judicial, citing the ECOWAS Community Code as a case. Duke Ekpeong Bassi, legal officer at the ECOWAS Community Code of Justice, highlights the challenges the code faces in the implementation of the rulings.
Judgment of the court is final and binding on member states. But when these member states receive, like Ghana refused to implement judgment of the court, saying that they don't have the provision in their civil procedure rules to enforce judgment of the court, that it is a foreign judgment. Liberia has done the same thing. As we speak, Republic of Benin is also agitating, and that is one of the challenges we're having.
The ECOWAS legal officer also acknowledged the significant roles of the CSOs in pursuing various countries to adhere to rulings. He urged CSOs to explore an existing ECOWAS article to further compel authorities to respect the court's ruling.
We expect the NGOs within the sub-region to please take full advantage of the courts and actualize their respective mandates and their aspirations.
In the meantime, Julian Atakla Ayinon, team leader, governance and human rights unit of UNOWAS, calls for more dialogue, while highlighting the uniqueness of the ECOWAS Community Code of Justice.
We have, in the West Africa region, we have a community court. That is the only one in the world that allow right holders to bring their claims even without having to exhaust a local remedy.
Despite these hurdles, the court's role in promoting human rights within the ECOWAS region remains vital, signaling a commitment to justice and rule of law. For Newslink and West Africa Democrats Radio, I am Sankula Jenka reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Over to Nigeria. In the aftermath of a devastating attack on Fulani herders in the Kwad district of Bassa local government area, Plateau State, North Central region, community leaders are appealing for restraint and calm. The attack, which occurred recently, resulted in the tragic loss of 2 herders and over 150 cattle. Usma Umra in Abuja reports.
Despite the escalating tensions, the leadership has urged its members across the state to refrain from retaliatory actions, emphasizing the importance of peaceful coexistence. Garba Abdullahi, the state chairman of the Gan Allah Fulani Development Association and leader of the coalition of Fulani in the state, has strongly condemned the attack, calling on security agencies to conduct a thorough investigation and bring those responsible to justice.
We condemn this thing that happened in totality because there had been a relative peace here in Bassa local government with the effort put in place by various stakeholders to see that this place has come to peace. This is an unprovoked attack. We don't know what happened. We are calling on the government to investigate, more especially the security agencies. They should swing into action and investigate and arrest the perpetrators of this heinous act.
However, reports from the Fulani community indicate a grim reality, with the death toll of cattle rising to 250 and concerns growing as several cattle remain unaccounted for. Again, Garba Abdullahi speaks.
It is painful to lose such a huge number of cows just under some hours, which a cow now costs on the average 500,000. 500,000 times is more than 100 herds of cows. Something that you have been grooming for a vast number of years. Somebody overnight just come and ridicule it, destroy everything. Nevertheless, we are still calling on our law-abiding people to become law-abiding, and nobody should take laws into his hands, and we should report things appropriately to the appropriate authorities that we're supposed to report to.
As the situation continues to unfold, troops from Operation Safe Haven, responsible for maintaining peace and security in Plateau State, are currently on the ground working alongside Fulani herders to assess the situation and prevent further violence. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Still in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu has ordered all government agencies and ministries to purchase only vehicles powered by natural gas as part of the country's effort to transition to cleaner energy and cut high fuel costs. The president issued a directive on Monday through his special advisor on media and publicity, stating he expected all government departments and agencies to start disposing of all petrol or diesel-powered vehicles going forward. All new government vehicles, generators, or tricycles must utilize compressed natural gas, solar power, or be powered by electric energy sources, the directive added. In the decree, President Tinubu expressed his commitment to effectively harness the country's gas potential to alleviate the burden of high transportation costs on the masses. Liberian President Joseph Boakai has by proclamation declared today, Tuesday, May 14, 2024, as National Unification Day and is to be observed throughout the Republic as a national holiday. The day is in consonance with an act of legislature of the Republic passed in 1960, declaring the 14th of May each year as National Unification Day, realizing the benefits to be accrued from the unification and integration policy. WADR's Darlington Pogba has a report.
In line with today's event, the Liberian leader has reaffirmed his government's commitment to fostering peace and reconciliation in order to enhance social, economic, and political development in the country. The president's commitment was continued in a speech delivered on his behalf by Andy Kremini, Deputy Minister of Sports, during a program marking Unification Day.
The government of Liberia remains committed to collaborating with civil society partners that are involved in initiating programs and activities aimed at promoting peace, development, social, economic, and educational and international cultural understanding and cooperation among others. The government is committed to working with civil society partners in advancing national unification, healing, and governance, including its component of transparency, accountability, and acknowledging the dedication and sacrifices of senior citizens in transforming the lives of all Liberians.
During the event, dozens of civil society organizations filed a 7-count recommendations calling on the government to complement the efforts of CSOs in accelerating unity among Liberians, a country heavily divided on ethnic, political, social and religious lines. Augustine Akwe read a statement on behalf of the CSOs.
That the government of Liberia through the national legislature should appropriate funds through the physical budget to facilitate programs, projects and activities to commemorate National Unification Day nationwide. 2, that the government of Liberia should provide support for the establishment of the Unification Diaspora Initiative UDR, which will seek to identify and engage Liberians in the diaspora to contribute to unification, integration, sustainable peace, and inclusive development in Liberia.
The issues of unity among Liberians has been a challenge for successive governments since the end of the country's decade-long civil war that ended in 2003. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pokpa in New Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese Navy rescues 252 migrants 30 kilometers off the coast of Dakar. Mali's junta leader Colonel Assimi Goïta receives report of the inter-Malayan dialogue with a promise to restore peace. The federal government of Nigeria orders all ministries and agencies to purchase only vehicles powered by natural gas. Still ahead, the government of Sierra Leone receives allocation to build its first national electricity grid. We also have the guest interview and sports update. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now to Sierra Leone. The country inches closer to self-power sufficiency as it receives allocation to build its first national electricity grid. This giant stride is thanks to a $412 million financing from the United States International Development Finance Corporation. The power plant to be built in Freetown would increase electricity supplied across the country, where only 15% of the population has access to power. Abdullahi Hassan has more details in this report.
Known as the Western Area Power Generation Project, the power station is being developed by Kenyan-based Milele Energy and Abu Dhabi-based TCQ Power, while an Indian conglomerate, Shapoorji Pallonji, will be in charge of construction. Siemens Energy will control the operation and maintenance of the generating equipment. The $412 million Development Finance Corporation DFC funding comprises a loan of $292 million for an 83-megawatt gas fuel station in the capital and $120 million in risk insurance to encourage a private sector investment. The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development is, for its part, supporting the deal with $40 million as a loan. Speaking at the signing ceremony last Friday, Nisha Biswal, DFC's Deputy Chief Executive, said the corporation was proud to support the country's first large utility-scale independent power project and lay the foundation for reliable and affordable electricity in Sierra Leone. David Moinina Senge, Sierra Leone's chief minister, reaffirmed his government's commitment to providing reliable, clean, affordable and sustainable energy to support the country's national development efforts. The Western Area Power Generation Project will become Sierra Leone's main power source of power generation upon completion.
Abdullahi Hassan Fight that report. Ghana's Minister of Finance, Dr. Amin Adams, has declared the worst of Ghana's economic crisis is over, pointing to the improved indicators. According to the minister, growth ended 2023 at 2.9%, above the target of 1.5%, as he expressed confidence of the possibility of the country attaining a single-digit inflation. Speaking at the launch of the African Prosperity Dialogue 2025, Dr. Adam, however, conceded that the recovery has come at a cost to Ghanaians.
After having been hit by negative global developments recently, we have to reset our economies to become more resilient, as we have no control over those global happiness. Ghana, for example, was doing very well before this global happiness. We were growing at average 7%. Inflation was a single digit. Fiscal deficit was on target. But the good news is that we do not relent, and therefore we have been implementing pragmatic policies which are bringing the economy back stronger. The rebound in our economy is well appreciated by our people who have suffered the hardship inflicted on us by this global happiness. And we are confident that sooner than later, the sacrifices they have made will bear fruits.
Dr. Amin Adams is Ghana's Minister of Finance.
This is the Newspaper Review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the Newspaper Review.
The Newspaper Review.
Let's join Sankle Jankot in the Gambian capital Banjul for the Newspaper Review.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the Press Review. Let's begin today's Press Review with the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on Fourier reads, Gambia, Senegal to hold trade talks in July. That's the lead story on the Fourier newspaper. And let's move on to this other one. And it reads, NHRC advises enforcement, implementation of Anti-Corruption Act, National Audit Office recommendations. Anti-FGM campaigner Fatou Balde to receive 2024 Women's Rights Awards. That's another story on the Fourier newspaper. Another one reads, forensic expert testifies in police shooting trial. And finally, this one reads, the ombudsman registered 240 cases from 2021 to 2022. Now, let's move on to the Standard newspaper. And that's quite an interesting lead there. And it reads, Aisha Fati arrested in Senegal. Aisha Fati is a Gambian influencer. And she was undergoing a trial here in the Gambia after a case was filed against her by one Cham, a Senegalese national, who claimed that Aisha extorted money from him with the pretense that she will marry him. According to him, he has spent millions of dollars. And while the case was ongoing here in the Gambia, it is reported that Aisha has been arrested in Senegal. 3 travel operators sue government as well as Hajj Commission. That's another story. And this one reads, UDP's Mane says OIC summit was missed opportunity. Gambia leads successful resolution on human rights, culture of peace at HRC 55th session. That's another story. This one reads, Gambia-Senegal reach trade agreement. CPA, that is Child Protection Alliance, cautions Assembly over repealing FGM law. Witness says slain Briton buried in Sakaway. And finally, on the Point newspaper, the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, British lady body found inside septic tank, says Witness. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. And it's back to you in the studio.
Sankle Janko there with the Newspaper Review.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
We take you back to the story about Mali, where the president of the transition officially received the final report of the Inter-Malian dialogue on Monday. Colonel Assimi Goïta noted with satisfaction the process of these exchanges, which according to him will make it possible to resolve conflicts in the country. As a result of this latest development, WADR engaged the views of governance expert Morgan Asogba regarding the impact of extending the transitional rule of Colonel Goïta, including the message it sends to the Sahel and the entire sub-region.
The reports just fall in line with the vision that has been established since Colonel Assimi Goïta took over the transition period with all his team. And the vision is to figure out the best approach into dealing efficiently with the terrorist attack and the security issue within Mali and the Sahel in general. The same perspective is being observed in Burkina Faso and Niger. So these reports making room for the extension of the transition period is just understandable, though it seems to move far away from what has been understood at the beginning as transitional period, which is to lead to a civilian leadership at the end of the day. So it seems like democracy and its own perspective are being put aside, and it's making room for a different type of leadership, which is the military rule, until probably the people are tired of the system and decide to get back to democracy as it is understood and as it has been observed so far.
What message does this extension of the transition present to the world about democracy in Africa, especially the sub-region?
Definitely a message that says we have a different way of understanding the principles of democracy, which is the most relevant thing is to maintain, secure the people as long as the people are backing up our decisions and our vision. And that is why there is always behind any decision-making process of these military regimes the perspective of associating the people, be it formally more than fundamentally. It's up to every single observer to appreciate and every single institution to appreciate. What is clear is that some dialogue has been organized and some civilian and political actors have taken part of it. Is it highly representative? It's something that needs more attention and study to be clarified. So the message is simply that democracy is taking up a different perspective and focus on what is most important.
Morgan Asogba is a governance expert. Now, in the world of sports, the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights will hear the case involving middle distance runner Castor Semenya on Wednesday before a final ruling. Semenya, 32, was born with differences of sexual development and cannot compete in female track events without taking testosterone-reducing drug. The South African believes war athletes is showing discrimination against athletics and with her condition. And that's it on this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudoju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio